West Virginia hits the road once again to take on the Houston Cougars and looks to snap the five-game losing streak and get in the win column in Big 12 play. We're going to break down the matchup here today on the Walk Thru GameDay Show.
Look at what happens when you're consistent, again, in all three phases of the game. Look at what happens when you're focused and you don't have the mental breakdown and the MAs that prevent you from doing exactly what they did in Stillwater.
Rich Rodriguez has a strong backing. Ken Kendrick, Pat McAfee, Ike Morris, so on and so forth. There's a lot of people with deep pockets that are ready to help this football team win.
Your lightning in the bottle guy is your lightning in your bottle guy. So sometimes you can't put him in that role because he's going to get beat up and nicked up throughout the course of the game, which does take away from his flashiness and his ability to make big plays.
Give me the Mountaineers, baby.
But yeah, this rivalry it's a lot of fun. It has to keep going.
Let's go Mountaineers all day, every day. Let's go.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another week of the Walk Thru GameDay Show presented by West Virginia on SI. I'm your host, Schuyler. That's my co-host, Eugene, Napoleon, former and legendary Mountaineer running back. West Virginia Houston will be kicking off this weekend at high noon Eastern time on FS1. We'll get into that matchup here in a bit, but a look at our show rundown. NIL, is it a concern for the Mountaineers? We heard some interesting things from Pat McAfee on College GameDay last week. We'll talk about that. Was this past Saturday the turning point for this season? Scotty Fox and his performance, the defense rebounding, is this a launching point for the final stretch here into 2026? And then, as always, we'll have our trivia question of the week, get to a commercial break, have our Napoleon's Dynamite players to watch, game preview, and round things out with our weekly Pick'em segment, which I'm getting very close to just trashing, Gene. I think we're going to try and do something else. Maybe pick against the spread or something. I mean, holy moly. I've been on quite the down spiral there. So let's go ahead and get into the NIL era here. That's what we're living in. And Pat McAfee, of course, kind of raised eyebrows across West Virginia last Saturday. And I was sitting there watching game day, and for some reason, I don't know if I was tuned out to whatever I was writing on for the game that day, but I didn't even hear it live. And then I went back and watched it, and there you have it. So Pat apparently had to cover for a big NIL donor, or big donor, I should say, to WVU for not coming all the way through with a commitment to certain payments. Don't know the whole backstory to it. That's pretty much all we know. It's been pretty, close to the vest, but interesting words that came out of Pat McAfee's mouth on Saturday. Gene, just your initial thoughts on that before we get onto the broader topic of it.
Well, first off, shout out to Pat McAfee for doing that. The love, obviously, for his alma mater, and the fact that you feel bad with any time something like that happens, you feel bad about it. And from what he said, Rich Rod called him directly. So obviously you have the means to do so and you want to help out, right? Is it shocking? I think that's the landscape in which we live in right now with these big donors.
It is.
When you look at the bottom line, the business part of it, that aspect of it, a lot of times when you're talking about return on investment, if you feel like you're not going to get a return on investment, then what are you doing, right? Nobody's writing a check just to be writing a check. So there's always something that you want in return. And I just thank God from Pat's perspective, he didn't do it for that reason. He did it because he wants to help the university. He wants to see West Virginia be in the same boat financially as some of these other institutions across the country. And that's why he did it. And, kudos to him for that.
And let's be honest here. This is not only happening at West Virginia. Like, there are donors all across the country. and some at schools that have already fired their coaches that are having this happen. Like, this is not rocket science. It doesn't take some crazy inside information to really crack the code here. I mean, it's just business 101, like you said. And I believe we talked about this off the air probably 2 or 3 years ago. And that's what my biggest concern, my biggest question was, and I kept asking you, and we kept going back and forth about it because I don't understand that or how this is sustainable, in the long term when you get a kid that is maybe a 5-star recruit or one of the most heralded prospects in the country, and you pay him all this money, or you promise that you're going to pay him all this money, and then he comes to your school and he lays an egg, or he goes and wants to leave after a year. That is
Mhm.
going to continue to happen all over the country, not just in Morgantown. And the further along we get into this, more and more businesses are going to realize they're not getting the ROI that they really want. And that's
Right.
why I'm concerned with how much money that these businesses are going to be throwing around, and particularly in West Virginia, where you don't have all these millionaires and billionaires like some other schools maybe do in the conference. Where's the money going to come from? Because if those very select few start to back out, is
Mhm.
are you in trouble at WVU?
Well, again, to your point, I think it's not just at West Virginia. The point is, of course, West Virginia being where we are as a program right now, in all the big money floating around. Let's just use our conference, for instance. In the Big 12, you have a lot of schools with a lot of money and a lot of
Oil money.
it's attached to it, right? So I think the best way to approach it, in my humble opinion, it really is the way that Rich has looked at it, no matter where he's been, well, especially now because of the new landscape of college sports. He's not just trying to throw a whole bunch of money at a situation unless that particular player or group of players are somewhat proven. So for me, the landscape is real simple. And I get it. You have to throw some dollars out to compete with everybody else that you're recruiting. But again, I'm old school in my thought processes as it relates to you got to get the right kid on campus in the first place. So if you recruit the right type of young person, that tells a lot. Because here's the big bag. The big bag is at the next level. Okay. NIL, yeah, these kids are making millions in other places or whatever the case may be. To them, that's the big bag, right? The long-term big bag is at the NFL level. So if you want to be developed, then you go to schools with good coaching where you can be developed and make some money, right? That's the tell-all in this whole piece. The model that they have right now, I agree with you, and it is troubling when you think about it from the aspect of if a kid goes to school A and school A pays this kid $3 million, $3 million. He gets there and doesn't like it. And now all of a sudden he collected, because he was there for a year or two, he collected his money and now he wants to move on. I'm going to give you something right now on our show.
Oh, here we go.
When you sign your scholarships, and I know it's from potentially semester to semester or year to year, depending on your grades, right? Once you sign it, go back to the old formula, NCAA, air quotes, where it's 4 years, 4 to play 5, right? If that's the case, you sign to come to West Virginia and you gotten money, you're not going anywhere, buddy. You're not. And if you do transfer, you're going to have to sit out. You can't have both. The
And
portal,
pay a
the
buyout.
portal, okay. And you can't have it that way. So if you go back and put some freaking restraints on this thing, you kind of claw back a little bit of the control, because right now it is out of control. It's out of whack. It's here. And you can't have that from a business model. So I think wrapping college football into professional football, when you added the dollars and cents, and I'm good for that. I really am. I'm not saying that these young people don't deserve to get paid, but howsoever, it has to have some guardrails on it, because right now it's all over the place. That becomes the problem.
Yeah, I mean, for WVU, like I said, you only have a select handful of people that can really change the program, and I think it's going to take a collective effort from the fan base to really get behind this thing and really understand. And I get it. Like, West Virginians, probably towards the bottom in terms of the average annual income, right? Like, that's just the facts. Is what it is. But if you can spare a few dollars here, spare a few dollars there, like that's what it might take. And a couple of years ago, and maybe even up until this year, I think a lot of people just didn't want to believe that this is what this has now become. Like this is what it is. It is you if you've got the money, you got to donate if you want your team to be relevant. And look, I know a $20, check or, $50, per month isn't going to sound like a lot, but every single dollar counts. And for these big donors, look, I don't know what structure they have and how they put these deals together with West Virginia. But if I'm Rich Rod and I'm Ren Baker and anybody else, even on the basketball side with Ross Hodge, I want to know that I have that money in the account sitting there so I can go and spend it when I go to the transfer portal. I don't want to have this commitment and yeah, I'm gonna give you X amount of dollars, a couple of months from now. No, no. Like and it's hard to tell the $1 million or the millionaire person that because you're telling him what to do with his money or her money or whatever. But look, if you're really gonna help us out, the only way this works is if I actually have what you tell me you're gonna give me in our bank account and that we can go use that pool of money when we get to the transfer portal. If I promise a kid something, I can't tell him that we're going to be able to pay him X when I may end up only have Y or Z. You know what I'm saying? So like to me, I don't know what that structure looks like, but they've got to find a way to prevent this thing from happening. And again, it's something that everybody's dealing with in the country. But my bigger concern, because I do think they're going to find ways to make it work. Ren Baker's a smart guy, right? He's one of the best in the business in terms of finances and all that stuff. He knows how to fundraise. WVU from that side of it will be okay. What I'm concerned about is when you have the Texas Techs of the world and you have maybe some other schools in the Big 12 that have all of this money that they can just keep going and going and going and going and going. And, $50 million to them is nothing. That's not what West Virginia's situation is. And I don't know how you can compete with that yearly unless there's some sort of restrictions or cap on the NIL part of it. I get you have the rev share piece and you have that salary cap, but then it's not really a true salary cap when you can have unlimited spending over here.
Sure. Well, again, old school answer. How do you beat that? Good development.
Yeah, I mean, it's what they're going to have to do.
When I coached, I won a lot of football games, Schuyler, a lot of football games, and we didn't have the most talent, believe it or not. We wasn't the biggest, we weren't the fastest, but I tell you what, I won about 90% of my games because I had smart kids. I can call plays from the sideline. I scripted my first 25 plays, and we ran. I mean, we was very successful. So my point is, and we played against other competition that I even had the referees come to me after certain games and say, man, wait a minute, I've never seen, wow. Because the preparation was what it was. And we played the game the way you're supposed to play the game. So for me, again, tackling, catching the ball, running over people, good special teams play, receivers catching, quarterbacks throwing, running backs running, defensive players tackling. Come on, dude. It's football at the end of the day. And I get it. If everybody's coming for this, for the almighty cheese, right? And you really don't want to be there, I'm sorry. I'm not recruiting you.
Yeah.
Because I know that's a dead-end street for me. Coach Nealon famously said, and I love this man for this quote, you may win some games with talent, but you will never win championships with knuckleheads.
I love it. That's got to be on a T-shirt. We got to get Dandy Dawn a T-shirt line.
We have to, because he's 1,000% correct, man. So you bring in the West Virginia is one of the most beautiful campuses in the country. And yeah, am I biased? I'm biased. But I was fortunate enough at once upon a time to be that guy where I took a lot of visits because I did transfer. So I had 10 visits basically, 5 at a high school and 5 when I transferred. So I went to some of the biggest universities and some of the biggest campuses in the country. West Virginia is a beautiful school. I've always said this, Schuyler. Get recruits on our campus.
And you got a fighting chance.
You got a fighting chance.
Yeah. And there was a quote that even Ross Hodge said. It may have been a Big 12 Media Day or something, but it was something he pulled from Larry Eustace, who he used to coach under and have a relationship with. And it was something about like you win with people, but you also got to be smart to realize too, like the donkey isn't going to win the Kentucky Derby, right? Right? Like you got to go out and find guys with talent and
Yeah,
you can't just get good players or good people. You got to have good players too, but you also have to have the right type of culture. And I think West Virginia is still trying to build towards that. It's not
right.
there right now. It's hard to do that when, and again, it sounds like excuses, but it's more reality than it is an excuse. If this was something that we're talking about in year three, then that's more of an excuse and that's a problem with the culture. When we're in, you know, I know we're months into this thing and almost a full year of Rich Rod being here, but we're talking about 9 weeks into a season in year one. It's still working towards something. You got to get more guys that were groomed from you from the very get go and have them in your building as true freshmen and develop them your way. It's going to take time. So I
I
think
agree.
you and I are on the same page. West Virginia is going to be just fine in this era, and we're going to
Yep,
see that here in the coming years. Like they have constantly said they're going to be in the top 4 or 5 in terms of resources in the Big 12. Okay, this year they weren't. They weren't positioned to be there. Now we'll see where that aligns in years to come. So to finish out this opening part of the show here, last Saturday, obviously, you lose 23-17 to TCU. And after the game, we said it right away. Like, we're not here to have all this talk and conversation about moral victories. But in a season like this, Gene, you've got to take every little bit of hope that you can, right? Any little glimmer is a silver line. So, Scotty Fox and his performance, the defense bouncing back and playing the way they did in that first 3 weeks of the season, you got to feel like this is a possible turning point in this season and maybe even into the future after the way they played Saturday. Do you feel like that's the case, or do you still need to see more to really believe that things are turning?
success comes from consistency. So it was a really good game based on what happened 3 weeks prior to the TCU game. We just didn't look good in any phase
Yeah.
of football. We didn't. So, am I impressed with what they did versus TCU? Of course I am. But now I want to see us put another complete game together at Houston. I want to see the growth. And the key is if there's growth week by week, now you got something to build on. Now you have something to look forward to. Now you go down to Houston, God forbid, and it just and you lose by 28 points. Now you're right back in the same discussion that you had prior to the TCU game 3 weeks prior to that. You're looking like that team, and there's
Yeah.
no consistency. So I'm optimistic from a standpoint of I want to see the continued growth, offensive line play, defense, special teams, the development of Scotty Fox. I think he's a talented young man. I really do. I think he's a talented quarterback. He is a talented arm, smart young man. So can throw it and can run it. I would like to see the continued development of Scotty Fox. Should he be the quarterback for the rest of the way? In my humble opinion, he's shown me enough in this small sample size to say yes, rock with him, because now you get a chance to see for these next 4 weeks what he's going to provide, what he's going to give you, and can he be that kid for the? Is he your future quarterback?
Yeah.
So these
And the
next
now. Can he be the now too?
yeah, these next 4 games will starting at Houston will show you that because this is going to be a tough game.
It is, and I think cautiously optimistic is a good way to phrase it because you're right. You don't want to jump the gun. Like I said in our Between the Ears show on Sunday, like I loved what I saw from Scotty Fox, and I'm not trying to take anything away from him, but it was one of the worst pass defenses in the country. So it makes sense, but now can he go on the road to Houston against what is a pretty good defense Willie Fritz is always known to play, good defensive football. If he does that on the road against that team and puts up two straight strong performances, it doesn't have to be, 300 plus yards, but just clean football where they're moving the ball, they're scoring it, they're keeping it close and playing competitive. Yeah, I'm going to start to believe that they're starting to close that gap. And look, we've talked about this many times too. When you start a new coaching staff into a program, this is typically the timeline, right? You lose big, you lose close, you win big. Can you start to move closer to that second phase where you're losing close? And last week you did. And I think sometimes fans just look at the results, wins and losses. Well, didn't win the game, so it doesn't matter that Scotty Fox threw for 300 yards. Yeah, it does matter that he threw for 300 yards because he proved that he could potentially be that guy for you. And that's a huge position that you need to figure out. So, look, it's not always going to come in the wins and losses. And I think this week is a good case in that because, look, you're going on the road, number 22 team in the country. They're 7-1. They're a salty football team. You may not win the game, but if you play a strong 4 quarters, a physical brand, and you play with that hard edge that they played with last week, now you're getting onto something. You're building some consistency, like you said, and who knows? Maybe you start to turn the corner the week after that against Colorado. So speaking of Scotty Fox, he set a whole bunch of history in these last 2 weeks. 2 weeks ago, he was the first freshman to start in forever. And then last week, we'll get to it here on the trivia question. So let's go ahead and get to that here. So Scotty Fox set a school record for the most passing yards in a game by a true freshman quarterback. Whose record was it that he broke? Was it A, Geno Smith, B, Freddie Wyatt, or C, Dan Kendra? Take a minute to think on it, and when we come back on the other side of the break, we'll reveal the answer, get into our players to watch, preview, and make our picks here on the Walk Thru GameDay Show.
Let's go, Mountaineer Nation. The final whistle might blow, but the real breakdown is just getting started. Join us right after every WVU game for the Mountaineer Postgame Show. Instant analysis, real talk, and zero fluff. What went right, what went wrong, and what's next. We've got it all for you. Hit subscribe, turn on the notifications, and be part of the conversation. Win, lose, or draw, we're breaking it all down for you, Mountaineer style.
Want the most accurate updates on the West Virginia Mountaineers? Visit West Virginia on SI, the most trusted source on everything WVU. Several stories published every morning, every day before your feet hit the ground. From football, basketball, baseball, recruiting, transfer portal news, and more, we have it all for you. Every angle, every update, every morning. Welcome back to the Walk Thru GameDay Show. Eugene, Napoleon, and Schuyler Callihan. Before the break, we asked our trivia question of the week, and once again, it was Scotty Fox set a school record for the most passing yards in a game last week against TCU by a true freshman, throwing for 301 yards. Whose record was it that he broke, Eugene? Was it Geno Smith, Fred Wyatt, or Dan Kendra?
I was teasing you prior to getting on here, and I'm like, I think you threw a zinger in there, buddy. I think you threw a zinger in there. I mean, it's obvious if you look at the three names. I could be wrong. I'm just going to say A, Geno Smith. He broke Geno's record.
You would be incorrect, my friend. So I did get you stumped this week. Yeah, I had a feeling I was going to go Pat White because everyone remembers that he played as a freshman. Geno, not necessarily as much, but everyone knows Geno can sling the ball around. No, it was not Geno. It was C, Dan Kendra. So a 51-year record has been broken by Scotty Fox. That was, again, Dan Kendra, 208 yards in 1974 against the Temple Owls. So there you have it. Scotty Fox beating Dan Kendra, and by a landslide. Let's be honest. This record may last another 51 years. I mean, 301 passing yards, that ain't no joke. And it's not like a freshman's going to be coming in here and starting all the time. So hats off to Scotty.
Absolutely. Hats off to him as well. That's good. He should feel real good about that.
Absolutely. So Napoleon's Dynamite time, baby. Who is your player to watch for this week's game for the Mountaineers?
Dude, you already know. I'm going back to
someone. Go back to the well.
I'm going back to the well, absolutely. And again, be respectful when putting Mister in front of his name. Okay,
Oh, yeah,
Mister
I
Fred.
will. Let me jot this down.
Yeah,
There we go.
Mister Fred Perry. We need a big game from him for sure. We need a big game on defense, period. But we definitely need a big game in that back end. So I'm going with that's my Napoleon's dynamite player to watch, Fred Perry.
Love it. And so for the rest of the players to watch, scratch that. It's actually players and coaches to watch this week. Gene, I don't know if you noticed this in the notes that I sent, but I did a little curveball here. We're going Jack Bicknell, the West Virginia offensive line coach. That's who I'm going. I could have went Scotty Fox, but that's too easy. I tried to stay away from the obvious. Jack Bicknell has to get something going with this offensive line. It was a little bit better last week with some changes with the starting unit. Malik Agbo is probably going to be out for this week or maybe doubtful, so they're going to have to find something there with Tykees Crawford. But if they can find a run game and help Scotty Fox out, it's going to help this team tremendously in trying to keep with Houston. So I'm going Jack Bicknell for the first time ever, history on the Walk Thru GameDay Show, with a coach being in the players to watch segment. So over to the Houston side, I'm going with Rook Brown on defense. They're the cornerback / safety. 33 tackles, 2.5 sacks, and interception. Flies all over the place. They've got a lot of good pieces in that secondary. And then on offense, I'm going with the obvious pick here, and that's going to be Tanner Koziel, the tight end, one of the best in the nation, 6'7", 250 pounds. Likes to box you out. He's Connor Wigman's top target in the pass game, or one of them at least, and is going to be a handful for West Virginia's defense this weekend. So Tanner Koziel and Rook Brown for Houston. All right, so Gene, let's start with here in our game preview with the West Virginia defense and the Houston offense. How are you looking at Zach Alley and how he plans to attack this Houston offense this week?
I'm hoping he starts with winning the line of scrimmage. I really do. I think in an environment like this, it's going to be tough if you don't first punch them in the mouth and win the line of scrimmage. You're going into a hostile, loud environment. They're ranked 22 in the country for a reason. And the adjustments that you have to make in a game like this is important. So I'm sure Zach is probably more focused on making sure that everybody is communicating and everybody knows what they're doing from the front part of your D to the back end, being on the same page. And to be honest with you, for some odd reason, I'm hoping we don't take a step back in tackling.
Yeah, last week was pretty good.
Last week was really good. So we talk about being consistent, winning the battle up front in the trenches, and then making sure we get the ball carriers and receivers and the quarterback to the ground and just don't have too many blown assignments in a hostile environment. Because I think if those things are shored up, you have a chance. You have a chance to do some really good things here. And I'm not saying that we're going to blow Houston out, but what I am saying, you at least give yourself an opportunity to be in the game. And I think that's all you need.
Yeah, if they play the way they did against TCU, I think you're going to have a fighting chance. Now, the offense is going to have to do their part. We'll get to them here in a second. But the way they flew around, played with conviction, and it didn't feel like there was as much thinking going on this past week as there was just going out and doing their assignment. And that's the sign of maybe a defense trying to potentially figuring some things out, but also just having trust in their teammates and knowing what they're supposed to be doing. So for me, let's start with up front. I think Houston's offensive line is kind of a little bit vulnerable, to be honest with you. They're a little leaky, as I like to say. They give up some pressures, they give up some sacks. And when you look at their left tackle, Alvin Abaselli, he's allowed 24 pressures, 15 hurries, and 2 sacks. That's not good, Gene. And you're giving up those types of numbers through just 8 games on the season. So that's one spot you can attack. But really, I think the center spot, he's not played probably up to par as what they'd have liked. So the offensive line as a whole has not been great. They've allowed 81 pressures on the year, 13 sacks, which ranks 57th in the country. And in large measure, that's why they're running the ball as much as they are. 61% of the time, Houston is running the ball. And maybe that makes that stat even worse about the offensive line. You're running the ball that much, and you're still giving up that many pressures, that many sacks in a more limited number of pass attempts. So that's on the offensive line. As far as Connor Wigman is concerned, Texas A&M transfer, former five-star quarterback, one of the top quarterbacks in the country, just didn't work out at A&M. He had some injuries there, and he comes to Houston for a second chance here, and he's done well. He's protected the football for the most part, 12 touchdowns, 2 picks. Two of his both of his interceptions have come when he's blitzed, so that's something to keep in mind. And with that offensive line play and how they've been, that's a way that you can attack them. And what I thought was interesting, Gene, and before, because this is the first time I really dove into Houston, I hadn't really watched them throughout the weeks or seen any clips of them in crossover tape a whole bunch. But I was really shocked to see how they get their points and how they manufacture drives, because when you look at some of their point totals and they're kind of in the 30s, high 20s, you're thinking, oh, they
Right.
hit the explosive plays. Not real. I mean, they kind of methodically work their way down. And a huge sign of that is with Connor Wigman. He has 45.6% of his pass attempts coming between 0 and 9 yards. That's like 9 or 10% higher than what Josh Hoover was last week with TCU, and that was the one main thing we were drilling is, hey, TCU loves to live underneath. Well, here you go again. Houston loves to live underneath, and last week you had a lot of success, so maybe you can find a little bit of positivity there. And then with his passing targets, look, they're not going to get the receivers a whole lot involved. Like, it's really Amari Thomas, Stephon Johnson. That's about it in terms of the receivers. Tanner Koziel, the tight end, who I mentioned in the players to watch segment, he's going to be his guy. He's huge. He's going to box people out. He can use his body to just get in great position. And if it's a 50-50 ball, it's really a 90-10 ball for him. Like, he is that good with body control, finishing through contact, absorbing hits. Just a really tough guy to bring down. And for West Virginia secondary, like Rich said, they're not very big, so it's going to be very pivotal to kind of knock him off his course early in his route to where he's not just running up the seam free. And then lastly, the run game. It's not been great. Dean Connors,
Hmm.
the Rice transfer, is averaging a little over 4 yards per carry. But Connor Wigman, he's their second running back, essentially. He's the guy that's going to be that secondary ball carrier for them. And look, he's not fast as heck. Like, he's not going to run away from you like Garrett Green or maybe even a Scotty Fox, but he can run through players, through contact, and you're not going to bring him down with an arm tackle. It's just not going to happen. So you're going to have to flock to the ball and get numbers there. So uh, more here, Gene, on maybe your number one key for this defense. I know you mentioned some things earlier, but your number one key now that we've broken down some of this a little bit more.
The ball, getting the ball carrier, whoever that may be, the running back, quarterback, indoor receivers, when they do catch the ball, getting them to the ground is key. I think rallying to the ball is also key. And the funny thing that wicks out to me, his interceptions, right? The two he threw. So the least amount of passing attempts, that shows you something because you can key in on that. That means if they're running the ball more than they're throwing the ball, obviously in passing downs, you know it's going to be a passing down.
Yeah.
So you really I think you have an opportunity there to really make some plays when you know they're behind the chains a little bit and they're going to throw the football. So I think it's not going to be this could be interesting for West Virginia's defense versus this style of offense. It's like styles make fights in boxing. I think this is going to it'll be interesting for our defense. And I think the defense may wind up being the star of this particular football game.
Gonna have to
Because
be.
I
It might have to be.
just think that there's enough good pieces defensively that matches what they do offensively, which really I feel kind of good about that. I feel good about that
Well,
matchup.
TCU's offense is certainly more explosive than Houston's is. And the fact that you're able to limit Josh Hoover to whatever the yardage he had last week and kind of got them out of sorts, they never got the run game going. And you look at Houston, and it's kind of like the same setup in terms of, look, you're going to try and live underneath. They don't run the ball great. They run it a ton, but it's not like they're ripping off these big, long runs. Like, their top running backs averaging a little over 4 yards a carry. That's not elite status, right? So if
Right,
you
right.
can if you can get into some 3-and-out situations, I know it sounds like cliche as hell, but like it's been a problem for this defense this year to where they're forcing some of those 3-and-outs. And it's key because it feels like every single week West Virginia's just getting killed in the terms of the field position battle. The field is heavily tilted to the opponent. Part of that's the offense not moving the sticks and staying on the field. A lot of it's what the defense is not forcing enough 3-and-outs and getting good field position. So, I mean, look last week against TCU. They started in plus territory 2-3 times in the first half. Like that can't happen.
Yeah.
And with Jamori Robinson, which is an interesting fact, he did not play against TCU. And Rich Rod said earlier in the week that it was kind of a mixture of a personal matter that he had going on, and also that he just they didn't feel like he had the great preparation for last week. So he might be back in the mix this week. But look, the 3 games he did not play earlier in this season in non-conference play, West Virginia was towards the top in sacks, in pressures, and all that stuff. The moment he comes back, and I don't know if it's coincidence or not, against Kansas, they can't get to the quarterback. They can't generate pressure. They can't generate hurries. They can't get sacks. That was the first sack. The one against Josh Hoover was the first sack West Virginia's defense has had in Big 12 play. That's something. And he was out. So are they better without him? I don't know. We'll find out. But thought that was an interesting thing to note there. So flipping it on over, West Virginia's offense, Houston's defense. I'll rattle off a few things here about Houston's defense and then flip it over to Eugene. So third downs. This is going to be a critical part in this game, as it always is, but specifically because of the challenge that it presents. Willie Fritz is going to really mix things up. Against Arizona State last week, it was so unpredictable what he was calling on third down. And I think that's going to be tough, especially when you have a true freshman quarterback back there trying to diagnose things pre-snap, figuring out where to go with the football. And Rich Rod has made it very clear, like they're not tagging 4 or 5 decisions on these plays. It's really just limited to maybe 2 and take off because they want to dumb it down enough to where he can execute it, not think too much. And when you look at what Houston did, third downs, there was early, it felt like the first couple of drives, they were doing a lot of simulated pressures on third downs. They were showing like they were going to bring 7 or 8, they'd back off and only bring 4. And then the second quarter, it seemed like they started to bring just some natural blitzes where it looks like they were going to be in coverage, and all of a sudden you have a corner blitz, you have extra numbers coming from the secondary. They just really mixed it up to where you really couldn't get a good read on what they were going to do. And that for Scotty Fox could be very tough for him to read this week. Second down, they love to get after you. That's their blitzing down. It's pretty much the same for a lot of teams in the country, but for them in particular, against Arizona State, the only game I watched of them, they really got after it in second down. They were bringing 6, 7, 8 guys on second down a lot of the time. And we talked about the secondary earlier. Their top 2 corners, Rook Brown, who's one of the players to watch, Mark Stampley, who, if the name sounds familiar, is a Georgia Southern transfer. West Virginia was in on him before he went to Houston. Jordan Allen, a safety. They're all tough customers to deal with. So they're going to make life hell on you. Hopefully you can find a way to uncork Cam Vaughn once again, and those guys aren't maybe as big of an issue as you see on paper. And as far as the passing game is concerned, they kind of live kind of like their offense does. They're kind of really okay with you just living underneath. Like they're not going to let the lid off the top and let you just throw it deep, but they will be fine with keeping things in front of you, making plays. They can trust their corners and their safeties. So that's kind of my quick rundown of some notes that I jotted down. What do you think?
Well, here's where Cam Vaughn has to have a big game underneath and break a few tackles here and there. And at the end of the day, getting your talented players in space and have them make a move, I think is where this game offensively is going to be won for WVU. You have to, they're not going to let you throw 9 routes all day long and post corners and all that kind of stuff. Houston's defense is not set up that way. So they will prefer you to dink and dunk. So for me, that's great. We can dink and dunk, but I need you to, and going in with the understanding, I need you to make somebody miss.
You gotta get that yak.
Yeah, we gotta get that yak. That's it. We got to get it. So that should be one of the biggest keys, because you already know 9 times out of 10, they don't want you to blow the top off the defense. But I'm going to throw this little nugget in there. You know how you beat defenses like that?
Let's hear.
By formation. By formation. You know, I'm not going to look. You take your one receiver and you put him in a position where he may not be lined up at your one position slot or position. You might move him around a little bit. You might get your slot receiver on a safety. Now, if you align it right and you position it right and you call it right, you might get 1 or 2 big plays over the top, because you might have your best guy just by formation on a safety. Now you could take that 1 or 2 shots that Houston may not be willing to give you, but if it's formation, if that guy's formation properly, that alignment is going to be a problem for Houston's defense. Now, we'll have to wait and see if that happens. But my point is, if it don't happen, to your point, we got to get that yak, yak, yak. You know, you got to get it. You have to get a big play somewhere against this defense to make this thing a little bit more, you know, where you got to keep them off balanced a little bit, so to speak. And if you can open up the passing game, we already know what that's going to do for your running game. So I'm hoping we can do that to really set up our running game, because we're going to need that.
Yeah, you definitely will. And against the run, Houston's pretty good. They're allowing 120 yards per game. It's 38th in the country. Against the pass, they're 52nd. So not elite, but not terrible. So they, like I said, they're going to give you stuff. You just have to make something happen with it. A couple of weeks ago, don't remember the exact numbers, but Noah Fafita, the Arizona quarterback, he was almost perfect against them. But again, they let him just kind of pick them apart underneath. I think he was like 24, 26 for a little over 200 yards. So they weren't producing all these big explosive plays, but they were giving they're taking what Houston's defense was giving them. And a lot of that is also because of Houston's pressure. They can definitely get after you, like I said, on second down, third down. Those simulated pressures can really confuse a quarterback. 101 pressures ranks 39th nationally. Their 21 sacks ranks 25th. And for what you were kind of saying there with the explosive plays and yak and all that stuff, the thing that I kept waiting for in that TCU game, Scotty Fox they'd always have him rolling to, well, not always, but mostly would have him rolling to his right, and he'd have 2 options to throw to, or he could take off. And it really got TCU kind of caught in a bind because they really didn't know what to do. It was kind of a pick your poison type of situation. And I just kept waiting. They kept running it. They kept running it. They kept running it. And obviously different routes off of those things. But I was waiting for that moment when Scotty would roll right. They'd have a receiver there, or maybe 2 receivers there. And all of a sudden, whoop, you see a receiver slip up the sideline and Scotty hits him deep down the field. I expect that's going to happen in this game. Maybe once, maybe more than one time too, because I don't think that Rich Rod is completely comfortable with Scotty just dropping back and launching it. We've seen him do it a couple of times. He did it against TCU to Jeff Weimer to make it a 1-score game. He did it against BYU at the end of the game, but it's not something I think you're going to want him to do in the middle of a game. The BYU game, the game was over with. You just needed to try and score. Same thing against TCU, but I think those shots are going to have to be created rather than just a drop back. Oh, yeah, I'm going to take my shot here.
No, listen, I agree with you. In that route tree, in the style of offense that Rich runs, in that particular route tree, and you're talking about tag routes where he's rolling out to his right and you have 2 receivers, a high-low concept with your receivers versus their defense. That back end, that back receiver, 9 times out of 10, when you're rolling and that safety is hovering over the top and you got the back end corner, again, Scotty Fox can make that throw.
Yeah,
he can make that throw, and I'm almost confident that for me, look, I probably would start out somewhere in the first quarter throwing that route. Yeah, I'm not even gonna lie, because at least to put Houston's defensive coordinator on notice. Listen, we're coming here to win. It's not going to be 3 yards in a cloud of dust, buddy. We're coming here to win. You know what I mean? We're going to air the ball out. And sometimes you have to do that, again, just to keep the defense off balance. And I would love to see that. I really would. I would love to see that with a deep crossing route with Cam Vaughn as your decoy. And because you already know he's going to attract a lot of attention from that secondary.
Yeah.
And if you can get the ball, he's going to attract a lot of attention. So it'll be interesting to see what Rich is going to come up with offensively. But there's no doubt in my mind, and it's going to sound, again, I believe we have the pieces to match what they do defensively.
Yeah. I'm right there with you. Like, I understand it's a 15.5-point spread or whatever it is at this point. But I'm telling you, and we kind of mentioned it last week, that this is kind of one of those games that of those remaining, you felt semi-decent about. This is another one. Like, Colorado probably next week, yeah, for sure. But Arizona State, Texas Tech, I don't know about that. The road has been a problem for West Virginia this season. I don't know if that's going to play into effect here, but you've got to find a way to manufacture a run game. It's got to happen. You can't expect your freshman quarterback to go out there and throw for 300 yards again against this defense. The offensive line has to get some push and find some creases for those running backs to take off. What can you do? Speaking to a running back here, what are you hoping the offensive line can do? Obviously, push and block and all that stuff, but is it just as simple as getting a hat on a hat? What's the big issue that you see in this West Virginia offensive line?
Well, I think being able to get a little bit of push up front, hat on a hat, mano-y-mano, and unfortunately, the last few weeks, we haven't won those battles.
Getting knocked back.
We haven't won those battles. So, if anything, this is really like a show me game. You know, if I'm Jack, my thing is, listen, I'm going into the offensive line, in my meetings, and I'm almost challenging them. I'm not going to mention the coach's name. I don't get nobody in trouble, but I remember years ago, my freshman year at Pitt, I'll never forget it. We had some pretty good.
Oh, if it's a Pitt coach, we can say that. I'm just kidding.
We had some pretty good linemen. And boy, let me tell you something. I remember the O-line coach, man, going back in there, and boy, he would light them jokers up. He would be, what? You know what I mean? Veins popping out of his neck. What are we doing? You know what I mean? But they had a lot of love and admiration and respect for where he was coming from. And that's almost where you are right now. We are the big boys up front. We are the big nasties. We set the tone. You have to have a game like this, and I think this is the right time to have a game like this. We set the tone. The goal should be, I want the backs to average at least 4.5 to 5 yards a touch.
Which compared to the last few weeks would feel like 10.
Yeah, but that would be my thing. I would write it on the board. Here's the goal. The running backs should get 4.5 to 5 yards a touch, and we're going to keep our quarterback clean. We're keeping Scotty clean. So what does that mean? He ain't getting sacked.
And last week, look, they did a pretty good job, I think, of protecting him. But I also think, too, it was Scotty realizing, he doesn't have all the time in the world to sit back there and diagnose things. Like, he was getting the ball out quick. And even when pressure was coming, it didn't phase him. And that's what impressed me so much about him. When there was pressure coming, when he would drop a snap, he'd pick it up, wouldn't panic. And he felt composed and under control the entire time. And I don't care what TCU's defense was ranked. When you show those things and those signs pop out, that's what you can build off of.
You know who Scotty Fox reminds me of? And listen, I don't want anybody to beat me up when I say it, because
Tom Brady?
Stop it. I am a fan.
Patrick Mahomes, I knew it.
I am a fan of this young man, and he happens to be the starting quarterback I'm not a fan of the team, but I'm a fan of this particular player. He is a rookie, and he starts for the New York Giants. Jackson Dart.
Oh, okay.
Scotty
if he turns into Jackson Dart,
listen,
my guy, you might have something.
To me, he has a little Jackson Dart in his game. He gets the ball out quick. He's cool hand Luke under pressure. He don't mind. He'll move around just enough to get himself in a position to make a throw or run. He makes those decisions real quick. He reminds me a little bit of Jackson, a little bit.
Hey, if that kid turns into half of what Jackson Dart is, whew,
yeah,
that would be something. So
it would be.
Speaking of Scotty, to round this out, and then we'll get into our picks here. Again, 301 yards last week. Really did just a fine job of understanding where to go with the football, getting it out quick, being accurate with the ball. What's the next step for him this week? Because at some point, like Rich said, you're going to have to add on to that menu of plays that he has, because you can't just keep going off of this little tiny sheet of play calls that you have, because defenses are going to know everything you do. So you're going to have to extend that. What does that extended part look like? What do you feel like is coming next for Scotty in his development?
And I think it's just a matter of reading, like you said, your playbook can't be, it can't.
A or B.
It has to look a little bit more like this. It has to, you know what I mean? You have to open that thing up. And I think he has the capacity to do that. I think he has the brain power to do that. I think he has the intellect to do that. Now, the key is going to be, here's the key. I'm going to flip that. The key is going to be, when does Rich feel comfortable enough to say, I need to open up my playbook, and instead of we keeping you on page 2, let's go from 2 to 8. Let's go from page 2 to 8. So that's the key, because sometimes you can restrict the player and it's too restrictive, and you're actually hurting his progression.
Because you're being predictable.
You're being too predictable with him. You're going to have to, so that's, to be honest with you, I think this game is the game where you just open it up. I really do. I think this is the game. Scotty Fox shown enough last week, again, against a below average TCU defense, right? But he made the right reads. He made the right throws. That's enough to show me, okay, we're going to take you off page 2, and we're going to go to page 3, 4, and 5.
We're going to graduate.
We're going to graduate. So I think, for me, I think that young man can handle that. So it's going to come down more coming upon the coaches to say, all right, let's open this up a little bit more for him and give him a little bit more. I think he can digest a little bit more. And if you do that, you might be pleasantly surprised of what you're going to get from Scotty Fox. Because he can make, like I said, we said this before, the young man can make all the throws. He has a very talented arm.
Quick release, everything.
So let him use it. And I wouldn't be afraid. Don't run him to death. I'm afraid of that. Now, that I will say. Don't run him to death, because sometimes it's like, okay, that's what we got running backs for. I get it. He's a willing participant in the running game. But he's not a running back, okay?
and really, that's part of the problem right now, and that's why he didn't run a ton last week, because all they had was Max Brown, and he wasn't even 100% last week. Now they expect him to be pretty close to 100% this week. So beyond Scotty, you have Max Brown and some walk-ons.
So hold on now. There's a kid. What's my boy's name? Is it Max Anderson?
Max Anderson, yeah.
Let me tell you now. I don't know what they're doing. Look, I told you about Max a while ago.
You did 2 years ago, actually.
Okay. Now, look, I don't know what they see or what they don't see. Yeah. The young man, he's talented in his own right. So, again, I ain't trying to throw nothing in nothing. I'm just saying.
He can play.
Okay. So, at this point, unless you're going to suit up Pat White, you might want to get your ducks in a row just in case, because, to your point, what happens, God forbid, knock on wood, if Scotty Fox goes down with an injury and Max Brown is not 100%, now what are you looking at?
QB7?
Sheesh. I hope and pray that we don't even have to dwell into even try to answer that question. So, let's offensive line. Let's keep Scotty Fox clean. Running backs. let's get between 4.5 to 5 yards and let's roll this thing out.
That could be a long, long afternoon in Houston. And actually, I lied. There was one more thing that just popped across my mind because it's something that I was a little stunned by earlier this week. But Rich said in his radio show that Bandit, Curtis Jones Jr., who we have talked about as somebody that is kind of played like a piece that they could build around on the defensive side,
Right.
could get some reps at running back this week. So he's the guy that they look at as potentially being somebody that could help them in short yardage situations. Then he said they're not going to have him learn 20 different plays, but 3 or 4. That way they can help out in the short yardage stuff because with Ty Edwards out, they really don't have a power back. Interestingly enough, which I don't know if you knew this, Gene, Curtis Jones was a 2-time All-State running back at West Virginia at Cabell Midland High School. Ran for 25 touchdowns, 1,700 some yards. So it's not completely foreign to him. How difficult do you think that will be for him to just learn a little bit to be able to be functional in those situations, given that he's already played the position during high school?
You want to laugh at something?
Uh-huh.
That might be his natural position.
You never know.
It ain't going to be difficult at all. I call them type of guys jackrabbits. That's the jackrabbit. That means you can put him anywhere in that natural fast twitch ability, he's going to flirt. No, for me, okay. Now you don't dug into my bag. Because a lot of times these coaches take these young people. He was a tailback in high school or whatever. That may have been his natural position. But because you bring him into a situation where you already have perceivably a room full of backs now, and because he is a good athlete, you put him on the defensive side of the ball and he can do some things there too. But tailback and or fullback may have been his natural position.
Yeah. He was an elite two-way player in high school. So maybe he could be that. I don't know. We're not going to get into the Travis Hunter talking or anything like that, but there have been guys that have played both ways. And Curtis obviously did it at a high level in high school. Miles Jack, before Travis Hunter, I don't know if you know who I'm talking about, played at UCLA some years ago. Yeah. Really good at running back, really good at linebacker. Yeah. I don't know if it's going to get to that point. Maybe this is just kind of a 4-game thing here that they're going to experiment with. But nonetheless, I'm excited. I'm ecstatic to see that because anytime a guy flips from one side to the other and it's a key spot like running back, like my eyes are all on that. So quick over under 2.5 carries for Curtis Jones this weekend.
Over.
You going over? Okay. For some reason, I don't know if he even gets one, but because he threw it out there, so we'll see. Maybe he's in there as a decoy. I don't know.
Listen, that ain't Rich. If he threw it out there, it's happening.
Hell, Gene, he may get 20 carries for all we know.
Because they look, if they
Curtis Jones, 20 carries, 148 yards, 3 touchdowns.
If they get inside the red zone, it's happening.
Oh man, that should be some fun. So I'll be excited to talk about that in the post-game show, should it happen. So let's go and get to our weekly picks here. Last week I went 5-0. Eugene went 0-5 on the weekly pick'ems. And no, I'm just kidding. I went an abysmal 1-4. So yeah, it is just not going well for me. So if you're listening to this part of the show and you want to go 5 for 5 to get Eugene's autograph picture, just go opposite. Just go opposite of what I say. Don't listen to anything except for the pick that I have and then go opposite, and you'll probably get Eugene's autograph in the next couple of weeks. So let's start with some top 20 action in the SEC. We've got Diego Pavia and the Vandy boys at it again here in our weekly pick'ems. Going to number 20 Texas, high noon Eastern time on ABC. This is a really tough one because I don't think Texas is as good as we all think. And that offense has really had a lot of trouble getting going. They really started out slow last week against Mississippi State. They rallied back and found a way to win.
Yep.
I keep going against Diego and Vandy, but going into Austin,
we go.
Horns down. I'm going Diego and Vandy this week. I'm not going to get them on the wrong side of this again.
There you see, that's all you have to say. See, because you already know where I'm going. Vandy all the way.
Okay.
Listen, that kid is such a winner. I will probably not bet against him for the rest of the daggone season. Vandy all the way.
Throwing in a non-P4 game this week because I thought this was a really interesting matchup. We've got Navy, undefeated Navy in 7-1 North Texas at 12 p.m. on ESPN2. Look, anytime you get to face that triple option, it is a pain in the so I don't know how North Texas is going to handle this, but Drew Mestermaker, the quarterback at NTU, is really damn good and probably going to be somebody that schools are going to try to lure away from in the upcoming offseason. I'm going to go North Texas, but I'm telling you, man, if Navy keeps the ball away from them, could be in trouble.
Mm-hmm. Here you go again. See? Navy all the way, man. I listen, come on. Navy all the way. I'm trying to help you out now. So, Navy.
With the midshipmen. All right, so I'm going to the SEC now again. Number 18, Oklahoma, and number 14, Tennessee, 7:30 on ABC. Ooh, Josh Heupel facing his alma mater here.
Hmm?
I don't like the way Oklahoma's played recently. And ever since John Mateer went out with the injury and came back, he just hasn't quite been the same. So I can't see them going on the road and winning this one. I also picked Oklahoma last week and they burned me. So no, I'm not going with the Boomer Sooner. Vols.
There you go. Okay, see now, all right, now you might be back on track. You might be. Tennessee all the way in this particular game, and I agree with everything you just said. I don't know if Oklahoma can go into Tennessee with lukewarm play at quarterback. Yeah, so Vols all the way.
Going back into the Big 12 here, number 17, Cincinnati, the surprise, one of them in the Big 12 this year, at number 24, Utah, 10:15 on ESPN. I really have been impressed with Cincinnati. I mean, the way that they got out to that huge hot start against Iowa State, they kind of let them back in it, but they finished the deal. Last week, they took care of business against Baylor comfortably. It's another team that I just keep knocking, but they continue to prove me wrong. But, man, it's hard to go into Salt Lake City and the Rice Eccles and take down the Utes. That's a physical football team. I'm going to go with Utah here, getting the win over Cincinnati.
There you go again. See, now you're off track again. You're not on track no more.
You're going Cincy.
You're not on track no more. The Bearcats, let's go. Cincinnati.
Listen, I warned you at the beginning. So go opposite. And now for the game that we're all here for. It is West Virginia at number 22. Houston, the Mountaineers looking to get that first win in Big 12 play. It's been elusive, but maybe they can track it down this weekend, get their first win also over a top 25 team in the Rich Rod era 2.0. Here's Rich Rodriguez on this week's matchup.
They're really two interior guys on defense. Their defensive front's really good, athletic, at linebacker, and in the back end. We again just fundamentally getting a little bit more push up front. Being solid with our techniques. There's things that we need to add to our package, so to speak, but I'm a little hesitant to do that with young guys in key roles.
All right, so it's the Mountaineers and the Cougs, 12 p.m. kickoff on FS1. Look, Gene, I did some studying because I felt weirdly not confident, but okay about this matchup. Like we've kind of hinted out there a couple of times in the show. Colorado is a team that I think is very, very similar to West Virginia in a lot of ways. We'll see them next week.
Right.
Colorado trailed Houston 16-14 at halftime. Then they got beat 36-20. So something shows me if you just hang around, you've got a chance. If it gets to that fourth quarter and you're a one-score game, who knows what can happen. But when you look at Houston, this is not to knock what they've done. They've done a really good job in all three phases. 7-1, but this is who they beat. Rice, Colorado, who is towards the bottom of the Big 12. Oregon State, who is 1-7. Oklahoma State, who is 1-7. Arizona, who has now struggled since entering Big 12 play. And Arizona State last week, good win, but Sam Leavitt was kind of banged up. So feels like even at 7-1, we don't really know how legit Houston is. We know they're in a lot better position in West Virginia right now. So I'm going to go with the Cougars, but I think West Virginia gives them another scare.
And it's funny you say that because, unfortunately, I'm going to go with Houston as well. Begrudgingly, I'm going to go with Houston because the eyeball test does not fail. It just seems like they have a little bit more clicking than what West Virginia has right now. I don't think it's going to be that way forever, but right now they do. So I'm going to go with Houston, begrudgingly.
Hey, we might pick West Virginia next week. I don't want to get into completely revealing that. We'll see. We'll see. So that's going to do it for us here this week on the Walk Thru GameDay Show. We thank you for tuning in every single week. For those loyal listeners that even though it's a long season, you sit here through potentially a whole hour-long show with us. And for that, we thank you so much for allowing us to keep this free at the moment. So really appreciate that. Hit that like and subscribe button here on our YouTube page at West Virginia on SI. For Eugene, Napoleon, I'm Schuyler, Callihan. You've been watching the Walk Thru GameDay Show, and we'll be back on Saturday with the Mountaineer Postgame here on West Virginia on SI.